everyone, and welcome to the second instalment of the second series of the Dark Matters podcast. This series aims to deep dive and uncover the purposefully hidden mysteries of this land, our land, in Gael land, and pull the proverbial thread of our ancestral past. And it is within this space-time continuum that we welcome Larry Cyprus, author of the book Booked, The Antidote to Political Tyranny, to further enlighten and enthrall us today. Larry traverses and documents the landscape of Britain and beyond, postulating that this land, our land, has been carved out for us by intelligent design, that the stars and intelligence of the zodiac have been mapped out within the landscape based upon subjective constructs and myths. As above, so below, as within, so without, has never ever, more than now, taken on such extraordinary meaning. Larry, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Larry, I was fortunate enough to bump into you at the WTF festival, and you graciously gave me a copy of your book. I don't believe in coincidences, and I had just finished my talk that had touched on many linked topics that come up in your book. And as we are beginning to understand, everything is linked when we do indeed pull that thread. So, as I say, the journey of the law is the journey of the spirit, and that journey has led me to here, to understand that this land is sacred, as indeed we are, and division becomes unity. And you touch on this in the book when we realise this. And that is why the matrix, the system, whatever you want to call it, is hell-bent on decimating what is left of that deep knowing within us. And I'm hell-bent on bringing it to light. So, Larry, if you had to summarise an introduction to the material we are going to cover in the next hour or two in one paragraph, what would you say? And how did you fall into this wonderful rabbit hole?
How did I fall into it there? Yeah. In my book, in my talk, I've just did a talk the other day. Basically, I think all our eyes were opened in 2020. We all gained our 2020 vision. And it's from there, in 2022, I was invited to join a small group of people who were going to go and look at the Star Fort in Berwick-upon-Tweed. And little did I know that my whole, well, my journey from 2022 till today has basically been guided by the stars. And yeah, the whole, I think I got watching Paul Cook. He was doing the geopolymer and saying how the White Cliffs of Dover were man-made. And from there, it was kind of like, well, if they're man-made, there must be some grand design that we can find, we can see. Although it can't be that easy, because otherwise we'd all know about it. And that's basically where I started. And what I found was totally mind-blowing for me, really. And I'm still discovering more about it. Even in the last couple of days, my knowledge has expanded again from what I've been looking at. And it's just constantly coming to me. I don't know whether this is like your quantum monkeys, you know. Is this, are we all becoming conscious of what's around us? And is this then feeding into our own wider consciousness? And we're all becoming more aware of it. And I think what I show will totally blow people's minds at first. And a lot of people basically, you know, call me some kind of mad, raving conspiracy theory lunatic. Hey, I'm in that club. I want to be there. If what I'm seeing is right, you know, and what I'm interpreting it, how I'm interpreting it is right, then we have lost so much information and so much history. And this is like the starting point. In fact, I describe the United Kingdom, the British Isles, is basically, it came to me that it was, if we want to leave a message, and I was watching one of your videos last night, and I think it was saying that, you know, when you die, to die, if you can leave your message, then you can have a good death, kind of thing. You know, you can move on, move forward, but impart your knowledge. And so my book was basically, I wanted to put all my thoughts down on paper and put them in a book. So I booked them. I put them in the book. It's booked.
That's where the book comes from.
Because it's my ideas coming out of my head on paper for, well, to move on. And the second booking is going to be even more mind-blowing. We'll I was hoping to have had that written by now, and it just expands exponentially out, and it's truly fascinating, I think.
Yeah. I find it absolutely fascinating, and like I say, it links in with my study, with my research, and my latest talk was called "The Law of the Law," which is LORE. So the law of this land that has been lost, and that kind of oral tradition where it would have been kept by our sages and our mystics and our magi, and passed down, because obviously with the inventing of the printing press, words, characters, alphabets, bets can be manipulated, and they have been, and that's why we go through these 100-year soft resets, and of course now they're going for the great reset, and I do believe that's kind of this cataclysmic dance between, as Neil would say, between Sirius and our sun, and as they've come away from each other, we're apparently at our thickest, like duh, and we've all been not, and now, like you say, Larry, it's like as they're coming together, and if you don't understand a word I'm talking about now, go watch our videos with Neil and it will make sense, because we haven't got time to go over that, but that we are starting to become into this age of reveal or revelation, and we're starting to see these things around us, and they're popping out, aren't they? And I find it absolutely fascinating. It really blew my mind when we had a chat, but then when I read the book, and I was like, oh my God, because I know that albo means white, and that goes again to this RB1 gene that appeared on on these lands, and then we're getting into our Anunnaki and creation myths, and we'll get into that a little bit later. But the Albion means land of the giants. I mean, you can use your search engine of choice to find that. I mean, that's on Wikipedia. It's not like a big hidden secret that it meant land of the giants. And it was said that the White Cliffs of Dover, it was linked to that, but we know that there's a lot more to it than that. But not only that this place is land of the giants, and this is where you blew my head, Larry. I was like, you were like, you're standing on them, and I went, oh my God, because of this idea of petrified titans. So could you tell us, but let's start there, because I just love this stuff. So you've on your YouTube channel, and we'll link Larry's channel below for people who want to go and study a little bit more about this. But it blew my mind that not only is this land called the land of the giants, and then that goes back to our, to the Nephilim, and that all these stories came from Great Britain and Ireland, all the biblical stories, allegedly. But we're actually standing on these petrified titans, which again fits in with this idea of this cyclical cataclysm that the elites or the elven tribes or whatever we want to call them, they know about. We don't, but we're all starting to remember. So could you tell us a little bit more about the idea, because it's in your book, about the floods and the use of LiDAR and 3D modeling, isn't it, to kind of show this in our landscape, and it is, like I say, for those that have eyes to see, isn't it?
Yeah, so my book, effectively, I finished writing that in December last year, just gone now. I've just got my first reprint done, and I've added more pictures. Since then, I started watching Sally Jane Delaney, and she's on Geology, and this kind of tied into what I was looking at. We'll come back to that one, how that ties in. But basically, she was looking at St. Agnes in Cornwall, and in St. Agnes on the beach, there is a 90-meter tall skull, and it's facing the beach. You can go and zoom in on Google Earth. It's fantastic. And basically, you've got the head, and it's tipped back on itself, and you can see you go there, you can see the vertebrae in situ. The jaw is open, and I've got this 90-meter skull, then my rough calculations gets you a 600-meter tall giant. And he's small. He's the smallest, really.
Wow.
Giant that we've looked at and seen there. But yeah, if we go back even 100 years, the books told us that England, the United Kingdom, the British Isles was the land of the giants. And there was always the myths and the stories, you know, Jack and the Beanstalk, Jack the Giant Killer. They're all from England. But these giants actually lived all around the world. But it kind of, our history is, I think your other contributors are coming in and telling you how the history that we're taught is basically just the history of England. We don't look at the rest of the world. You know, Egypt's in England, Jerusalem's in England. You know, everywhere it's all in England. And your other contributors are coming in and saying that. But yeah, I think society is built upon the corpses of previous societies, not the ruins, but the corpses. Yeah.
Wow, it just blows my mind that. Just and could you tell us a bit more, Larry, about the idea of Lower Egypt and Higher Egypt as it relates to this land? Because I know you touch on that in the book. So, because obviously there's a lot of people that won't kind of know what that means. I do, obviously, having read it, but
so we're told, which usually means I'm going to tell you now a lie. We are told, yeah. We are this untruth that we are told that Egypt was basically made of two lands. There was the River Delta, which is Lower Egypt. Now, in our minds, this is a bit difficult because this is north on the map. So Lower Egypt is the north of Egypt in the River Delta, the Nile Delta, and Upper Egypt, we're told, is just behind that to the south. Like I say, it's all kind of upside down. So Higher Egypt is to the south, and it's the higher land overlooking the delta. I don't even buy into that now. I'm airing more now to Upper Egypt is above. So as above, so below. So everything we start looking at, and we will be looking at, we are referring to the skies, the heavens above, the firmament, whatever you want to call it. And we are basically then mimicking that on earth. So Jerusalem is actually in the heavens. Memphis is in the heavens. And we are basically mimicking that, reproducing it down below. So as above, so below. So if you go and look for Jerusalem, you will find it. You'll find 20, 30, 40 Jerusalems on earth if you look hard enough. So it's like it all gets real. There's a lot of replications, a lot of things, but it's kind of man's I don't know, sort of like what's the word I'm looking for? Kind of well, it starts with religion is maybe the closest word I can come to, but it's our worship of the gods that have provided us with the land, with the food, with everything. Everything was free. Everything is free, you know. And then, but we'll go into that maybe a bit later as well.
Yeah, and that's super cool because it fits in with our episodes with Neil and the series we're going to do with Neil. And one of my dreams is if I can get you, Neil, and maybe a few others on. Well, maybe another, maybe like I say, Stephen, if he would be up for it, because I do follow his posts and work at the moment, and that I've been introduced to a while back, and he talks obviously about Scotland as the Holy Land. And it's interesting, when I went to Scotland for the first time, and I'll admit this, which is a terrible admission, but I'd not been to Scotland till about a year or so ago. And as I drove from, I mean, as you go through Cumbria, I mean, it's, you know, that is just so beautiful. I mean, that's just in and of itself such beautiful land. But then you get into Scotland, and I even said under my breath, I went, this is the Holy Land, this is the mothership. And I said it to myself without any real kind of conscious understanding of it. It was like, and like I said to Neil, it's almost like, and I get goosebumps, it's like we're remembering this stuff, isn't it? And you know, because we've just not seen it, and we've been told as again, as Neil would say, this Disney-fied timeline, this Vaticanized timeline, and that they've inverted it and switched it so that everything's coming from here, and they've said it's come from over there. So, you know, it's like it is standard tricks of theirs, isn't it? Don't look here, look there, to confuse. So we've got this disconnect all the time. And you've touched on it in the book. I always say, how can we heal from a past when we don't know what it is? And Laura Eisenhower said that to me, and that stuck like muck with me. And I thought, that's exactly it. So Jonny, do you want to, before I ramble on, have you any thoughts so far? I mean, like I say, you nickname it, don't you, the Albion Zodiac, and again, that's like kind of a really powerful term. And we will add some images in as we go along, because a picture tells 1,000 words, and how you fit the zodiac into Great Britain. And I know you do reference in the book some people who obviously inspired you. One of them, I think, was called Graham K. Griffiths, who wrote a book called Landscape Zodiac. I know you mentioned him and give him a very big nod, and I definitely want to get that book. And yeah, I mean, I find it absolutely fascinating. But I'll let Jonny get a word in before, because I'll get giddy at this. And when I get giddy, I tend to go off on one. So I'll stay stuck for 5 minutes.
You mentioned something before about geology, did you say?
Biogeology.
Right, biogeology. Is that hinting at there's the rock formations are from some biological thing that you're saying there's a biological, either a creature or a giant or something that was left in the rock, and that's petrified, and that's ended up being a rock face, right? Yeah, I just want to explain that. So I saw that I know where I'm at on that page.
Yeah,
I mean, I'm a little bit on the I don't know what the right word is. I don't like being on fences or anything like that. The thing is very, very interesting, as it was with Neil, because he sent me all over the place, and I did a little bit of studying on that. But like he'd done like 25 years of studying what he was bringing out, and I only had 2 weeks really to try and match up with some of that things like. But I know what the arguments will be when someone says that these cliffs, like you mentioned that the White Cliffs of Dover were manufactured, would you say? Right. You see, the argument that people are going to bring forward would be this, and this is what I'm going to ask you the question for, is that those are seashells that, because all over the world, the equator's changed. I mean, we were on the equator once because of the way the plates move, if you know anything about the geology of the Earth in that sense, over millions of years.
Taught geology.
Pardon?
You've been lied to about the geology. You've been taught.
I wouldn't know that. This is what I'm getting at. I don't know about that, to be honest with you. There's a lot of things that have occurred and it has changed. That's obvious. But you wouldn't have fossils of creatures that were living in warmer weather over here where it's cooler, and they're no longer here. So that's obvious that there's been a change in the atmosphere.
In climate.
Yeah, climate. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I'm saying. But the thing is that rock formation, the people that work in geology, you're actually in a position where you're actually calling them liars, not me. I'm just asking you a question, right? I'm not sure I go with that though, because it makes perfect sense when you look at the layers of sediment everywhere, that they come up in layers, and you can tell the difference between century upon century what's in there. There's not enough, whether it's fossils or whether there was a fire or whether there was a flood, and they've done well to discover that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have any understanding about how things were created, how the mountains are pushed up and the rest of it. Otherwise, you're looking at some kind of supernatural force with a magic wand that created the Himalayas. So, and it's so long ago that not even I, you, or anyone else is going to be able to say this is 100% a fact. This is what's happened. If you're calling a geologist a liar, then we have to assume straight away that you're telling us the truth based upon your findings. So what I'm actually saying is that the chalk cliffs, which is a sediment of, according to geologists, seashells and stuff that are crushed down under the weight, and then it's folded over. Also, on that same coastline, that wasn't simply a coastline, as we know, and we discussed with Neil Bentley, all the way from Norway, Denmark, right across Britain and to Ireland was one landmass. Not that long ago, you could walk across it. We're going, 10,000, 11,000 years ago, something like that. So if that's broken down, washed away in a flood that came, washed it down, settled back down, and left the land formation where it was, and the waters remained where they were, where the water sunk, how do you go around? This is the question I've got for you, Larry. How do you explain those cliffs of Dover being manufactured by, say, giants or something else, rather than it being a geological natural event which takes place all over the world throughout all the centuries and millennia that we've been through?
Right. So my part of the answer to that is prove to me that the geologists are right. They're only giving you supposition. They're only saying, you know, the land, we think the land has come up. Where's the evidence? There is no evidence for it. In terms of White Cliffs, now, Paul Cook was there, and basically he's showing you the block works. You can see the blocks in the cliff, and they're huge. They're absolutely ginormous because you ignore them and you say, oh, that's just how the chalk has fractured. But no, they're rectangular. You can see them, and then you've got flying buttresses up the side of the cliff, and you've got to then look at that and say, hang on, how has that formed? 2 miles underwater, and then a mile below that because you've got to have pressure on that. And then that's come up 4 miles up to where it is now. And then when I go into the actual design, and it is a design, you'll see that this cannot be a natural formation. So the evidence that I present shows that it's a totally unnatural formation. So if we imagine then that this has been built as a wall, and I suspect that this wall was over 1 kilometer high, you know, a mile, you know, eighth of a mile, 0.8 of a mile, you know, type thing. It's higher than that. It's a wall. It's being built up. So there's 2 reasons for why you would want to build a wall. You want to build a wall to protect yourself from what's outside, or you want to build a wall so that you can build up the land inside that wall and give yourself a higher level. Now, again, there's reasons for why you would want to build higher. So you might want to protect yourself from what's down below, what's running around on the true surface of the earth, which is covered in sand underneath the sea at the moment. And there's good reason on that one too. And so the actual, when you actually see the land for what it is, you will understand that it cannot be geologically formed at the bottom of the sea, 1 mile, 2 mile, 3, 4, 5 miles down, and then have risen up in such a manner that it just so happens to look like something else. But that is a man-made, and the thing it looks like is a man-made construct. And then, and in my talk, if I know you've probably not seen it because I only got up onto YouTube last night, but it's a 2-hour speech, and right at the end of there, you totally be amazed because I extend this then and say it's not just the British Isles. There's something more going on. All land above water today is actually not naturally formed. It's not.
I mean, I know
natural.
there's actually sea creatures in fossils in the Himalayas.
Have you seen the fossil where there's a fish and it's eating another fish? It's frozen in the fossil. You can find that on Google, wherever. But for that to have happened, how has a fish been captured in a rock where it's eating another fish? If you think about, you know, because if they died together, then it might wriggle out or it might have eaten it, you know. But that's actually captured.
Point. I have no idea. No.
And it has to be like an almost instantaneous reaction to form the rock. So when I say geopolymer, there is something we don't know. There are lots of things we don't know, but there is a way of actually changing a fluid to a solid, and the reaction could be so fast that it's caught these 2 fish in the act of one eating the other, and they're not crushed. They're not crushed into tiny little fragments like they tell us. Oh, it's seashells in the chalk cliffs. They're not crushed. You can see them are there. They're solid things, and it's. Sorry, I'm just kind of like trying to get this in view for you. So the one fish is eating the other fish, and you know, for that to have actually happened and get caught in the stone, it must have been an instantaneous
Must have been. I mean, I agree with you. That's fascinating, and
which then that disproves that one fossil, that one image, then effectively questions the whole of the geology argument that it's formed under pressure at the bottom of the sea and risen up. Just that one image does that. I mean, and that's the thing with science as well. Only one piece of evidence needs to be shown to disprove the whole of science. And everyone thinks, and we're told, especially since 2020, the volume outweighs the single. And that's totally opposite. That isn't how science works. The singular disproof of a theory is more valuable than the volume of the proof.
Right. Right.
And
that's a good point.
You mentioned like other man-made structures also potentially even to Glastonbury Tor, and Neil talks about Hoe Hill as being lined up with the star Sirius, and we're actually thinking of doing a Dark Matters live on July 4th, because July 4th is when basically the ritual of them worshipping the Eastern Star, which is also known as Sirius. So we're thinking about going down there, and of course it's an army base, and it's all kind of like, don't look at this, next to the Freemason Arms pub on the land owned by the Dracos. I mean, you couldn't make this shit up, as we say. And again, you touch on this idea like totally, and obviously we just covered it there. But could you tell us a bit more? I mean, going from that and this idea of the flood again, Neil, we deep dive it there, and it's in every kind of myth, and every culture describes this, doesn't it, in a myriad of different ways. But you touch on it, and in relation to when you bought your new house, and that when you went into your basement, and the kind of the ripples in the land and stuff, like say that show that something. And again, I follow a guy on YouTube called Stellium7, and his work on petrified titans and petrified organs, and I mean, it's absolutely fascinating. I mean, one of them where he goes into the elephant in Spain, they call it Elephant Mountain, and he's a caver, and he starts to go, hang on a minute, this is an elephant. And the woman, of course, I don't know whether that's been debunked, but all the other stuff is is actually factual. But could you tell us a little bit more? You kind of came across those kind of findings just in your house I can't remember where it is you live. Was it Warrington or
in Runcorn? Yeah.
Runcorn. Nearly.
Runcorn. So the house that we are in is evidence of a mud flood, which I believe we're looking at somewhere between 1800 and 1850. There's been a deposit, and they reckon it's 2, 3, or 5 meters of soil in that time globally deposited. And yeah, so the house itself, and when you dismiss things. When you see a single bit of evidence, you dismiss it. You've been taught to dismiss things. Like the biogeology, you're told, oh, it's just pareidolia. You're seeing a face in a rock, and it's just your imagination. But so the house we moved into, basically the turn in the stairs is missing. There's 2 steps. They've got 20-degree turn, and there's 3 steps missing. And this is at the bottom of the stairs. And so you ignore it. You kind of ignore it and say, oh, it's just alterations to the property and the way that the layout has changed over the years, and you ignore it. And then I went downstairs into the cellar, into the basement, and there's holes in the wall that are about 18 inches lower than the floor level, and they look like square posts. And I'm thinking, oh, it's for a shelf. And then above the shelf, the wall is white. Below these holes, the wall is yellow, painted. And I'm thinking, oh, they've just painted. And you don't, yellow isn't an obvious choice of colour for a basement, a cellar. Although the sort of the disinformation on that is that it's lime wash to stop mold and growth. So it's lime wash. And so the evidence sort of slowly built up that the floor in the property, the ground floor, is 18 inches higher than it used to be. And so I've then got a problem with this, because if it's 18 inches above where it used to be, then the floor level, ground floor level, would be 12 inches below street level. So I'm told I'm an idiot. It's calverting, or resurfacing of the road. They've literally, because of the services they've put under the road, they've built the surface up on top of it. I'm thinking, who's the idiot? You're telling me that they couldn't dig a ditch to put a trench in, to put the pipes in, to put the services into the house, and then return the land to its original level. So what they've done is they've decided to lay the pipes on top of the ground and then raise the level of the whole road. And then because they've done that, they've now had to come and raise the floor level of every house. And we're in a terraced house. There's, 20 houses here, and there's 20 houses behind us, and there's 10 rows of 20 houses, and all the floor levels have been raised. And it's like, there's something not right here. And then so the ceiling upstairs in the house is actually a foot and a half higher than it is downstairs. And this isn't a natural thing to do either. Normally you would have either the same height upstairs as you do downstairs, or you'd have slightly higher downstairs. So the whole thing starts basically just falling apart. The evidence falls apart. So yeah, so I say that this house has been mud flooded, as has every other house. But you can't go back more than to 1850. You'll find a map, and it puts a spot level outside the house, and it says that is it now. And it's the same height then as it is now. It hasn't changed. It hasn't gone up or down. But I can't find anything prior to 1850. And the house wasn't allegedly built until 1874. And the whole, you think, well, hang on a minute. No, I've got evidence here that the built and adjusted and built after the flood, after the mud flood. But there's no evidence. It's been removed.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think that's what we're kind of uncovering, isn't it? It's all been hidden from us, removed, this falsification of history. And I know, again, you touch in the book of this idea of false paintings and that all these things have been put to around to kind of confuddle us, so that we kind of and we just take what we see as this. And again, it goes back to the mass printing, doesn't it, and the printing press. I mean, the Vatican are called the company of scriveners. They prescribe, that's why you get a prescription, a doctors and so on. They're prescribing this history, and we're starting to work out and figure out amongst us. We've basically been disconnected from our guts. We've been disconnected from what's in front of our face. I mean, that's the mass mind control. That's like the MK Ultra mind control of the masses, isn't it? So that we're just and like me and Jonny always say here, we're just postulating. We're not. I'm not an expert on it, to say the least. But this idea again that we can see churches, can't we? And people will call it perhaps Tartaria, where churches are like under the ground still by that much, and the windows in the ground, and something's gone on that they're not telling us. And if we talk about Tartaria, or Neil would say it comes from Tartar or Tartar, that's where you get a tartan skirt, and we're going back to the Holy Land of Scotland again, and it's all linked into that. So even that really is the kind of it's kind of eking out, but even that's probably not the full story. But it's just this inversion again, isn't it? Again, this Vaticanized timeline that they're trying to get us to focus on this, when as above, so below, of this land, and as I said in the introduction, within, without. And I do believe that scripture is anatomical and astro-theological. And again, our tribes, we would have moved with the zodiac as it kind of moved. And so I suppose we could kind of, on that note, if that made any sense to anybody, explaining it very badly, we'll get you to explain it better, Larry. How one of the images in your book that really kind of stuck with me is the image of the Preston North End, the Lamb of God, which obviously links to Aries, the ram, and how that kind of fits into the landscape as well. Yeah, the one, you tell it, Larry, because I'll explain it badly. But the football club, the lamb with the spear, that fits
Preston North
into
End, yeah.
our landscapes, and we'll have to put up some images, and please do go get Larry's book, because without the images, it's difficult, isn't it? Well, certainly for me to explain. So I'll stop and hand it over to you, Larry. We'll put some images up for sure.
Yeah. So Preston North End is the Lamb of God. You can actually see it. You'll find it in stained glass windows in churches, or Middle Temple in London.
Right.
Middle Temple being the Freemason Lodge in London. I just wanted to quote you from George Orwell, 1984. Those who control the present control the past, and those that control the past control the future.
Yeah.
So I think realistically, what I'm trying to do is kind of re-enlighten people to our past, our forgotten past, so that we can gain control of our future. And this is kind of where I go with, which is why I'm saying it's the antidote to political and religious tyranny in the book.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's like a big passion of mine. How can we know where we're going when we don't know where we've been? Like, and that's control. And that's why they're going with all this Disneyland stuff. Look at this, look at this, look at this, but don't look at this. And I know Neil's very passionate about that, and that spills through from there also.
So with the Preston North End logo, or the Middle Temple logo, or the Lamb of God logo, it's actually Aries. The constellation of Aries, and there is another constellation. And so when you see the lamb holding up the cross, there's another constellation that actually forms the top of the cross, and it's in the landscape of British Isles, and on the cross in the landscape is a Christ figure, and so this was revealed. So I did a little video when I saw Paul Cook's video on the White Cliffs of Dover. I said, you know, there must be some kind of grand design to it all, and I did a little video out on my YouTube, and somebody contacted me and basically emailed me the pictures out of this book, and it just sort of like, wow, that's it. These are the faces that I saw as a child 50 years ago, because I'm dyslexic, so we have the Encyclopedia Britannica, 24 volumes. I had 23 volumes that I never looked at because they were all just full of words. But I had the atlas, so I was constantly on with the atlas, and I would find faces in the landscape. And so when I saw Graham K. Griffiths' work in his book Behold Jerusalem, he does still have copies left. I have been in touch with him. There are a few copies left that he has pristine, and I can give you contact details for him, and so you could get one off him. I think it's about £20. He's still doing it at the original price. He published this work in 2003, and so anyway, the Lamb of God is in the landscape. It's so it's sort of kind of facing this way, turning back on himself, and his ear is sticking out, and that's Flamborough Head on the North Yorkshire coast. That's brilliant, Flamborough Head.
Right.
And as a kid, that always looked wrong, that bit, but it's actually the lamb's ear. And then, so we've got the Christ figure, and the Christ is Temple Sowerby is on his shoulder, if you want to reference this on the map. And he's got a brilliant picture of, oh, well, I've got a brilliant picture. So when Graham found this, what now, 30 years ago, or 20 years ago, when he saw the Christ figure, he needed to confirm that it was Christ in his mind before he sort of like could go on and say, yes, that's there. And he rang a friend midnight, and it was probably Good Friday, I think he says in the book. And he rang his mate on Good Friday. He says, I've seen Christ in the landscape. And he goes, and his friend said, what's the evidence? Because he knew where he was going. Everything has got bits of evidence, like you say. We'll come back to, yeah. So anyway, there's bits of evidence in names, in place names, in all over, that actually sort of like they confirm what you're looking at and that you're not the first to see it. So he finds the wound, the spear wound. When Christ is on the cross, we're told, another lie, that he receives a spear wound. And then we're told, is it Joseph Arimathea holds up the cup to catch the blood, and this becomes the Holy Grail, the Holy Cup. And so Graham looks on the map and he goes where the wound should be, because his friend asks, "Is the wound? Can you see the wound?" And he sort of said, "No, no." And then he finds it. There's a place called High Cup Nick.
I've walked up it. I live in Cumbria. I've walked up there. I know it.
High Cup Nick.
Yep,
you know it. Yeah.
It's cut on the arch. It's cut out. It's like a canyon. You can get on the top and look down it.
Yeah. You go look at that on your OS map or whatever, or LiDAR images. It's the shape of a spear. It's a spear. It's piercing him at the exact point where it needs to be on this landscape effigy of Christ. This effigy is 48 miles from head to toe, by the way. And so the spear, how big it was. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the spear and the land at High Cup Nick is bleeding. You know, the land is marshland, and it's as if the land is actually bleeding in sympathy with this whole image. And so Graham's basically saying the High Cup is the Holy Grail, and the nick is the wound from the spear. So High Cup Nick is the wound from the spear where they caught the blood in the Holy Grail. And it's just phenomenal. There's so many sort of coincidences on this, and I'm sure we'll put some images in here.
Said that in your book, and it's the, like say, it's the intelligence of the zodiac and the placements on the land, and this as above so below, and that it was the wound. You said that it was the wound that filled the Holy Grail, and it's like we say these things, don't we, day in day out? Oh, you're as above so below, as within so without, but without kind of any real true kind of. I always say, as in the law of one, it comes from the roots through the trunk, then to the tree of the mind. So it's like we can say them until it get one day you go, OMG, and you know, we're seeing it, and it's so interlinked, isn't it? This idea of Ra, the son of God. You know, we're going back to, you know, Jesus, or Isus was the sun god Ra, because J is Latinized, so that only existed in the last 500 years. So Jesus is a Roman civil construct. It's a Roman civil system, and they've, you know, made this into an actual story, and this again, this timeline, this Vaticanized storyline, and you know, not to offend, you know, Christianity in one fell swoop, but as I say, an annity is an annuity. An annuity is a Roman tax system. This is why the church offers salvation, because it's salvage of the vessel, and this reincarnational loop, potentially, who knows, that we've just forgotten who we are when we're all worshipping at this, like, and we're all told this story. And it's history, it's their story. And again, you know, you said in your book, Larry, that even the Sistine Chapel is the inside of a brain. It's the eye of Ra, isn't it? And I've got the tattoo on. I've tattooed all the answers to the nature of existence on me, weirdly, over the years. But again, Ra is Aries. Ra is the Lamb of God. That's where that comes from. And it links back to Jupiter, doesn't it, as well? Because Jupiter takes 12 years to orbit the sun, which is the Son of God. And through those 12 signs, allegedly, he is the keeper of the hologram. So again, it's this 12 disciples, 12 apostles, 12 planets, 12 cranial nerves of the brain, of the mind, and allegedly Saturn is the crown, which is linked to Kronos, which is linked to our legal system and the law. So for me, it's like all of it just comes absolute full circle. Like, and even when I talk about it, I get like goosebumps. And Jonny's great, because we always say this, we're like good cop, bad cop, because I get giddy and Jonny goes, what? And it's brilliant, and we bounce off each other really well.
Everything that you've just described there, Charlie, is just astro-theology, basically, and the manipulation of us as being used as chattel or slaves. There's a lot of stories that go on to it, but as early, not that long ago, from the Roman Empire turned into the Holy Roman Empire through Constantine, is the Vatican, and they've hidden things from us. They burnt Alexandra Library down. I think Neil alluded to that, but it wasn't just full of Gnosticism only. They had books from all over the world, and sorry to get off piece there, Larry, a little bit, but it's just that there are a lot of solar messiahs, Mithra, even Horus, all of them. They all have something to do with the passing of the stars, and they're not all got the same narrative all around the world. They're very similar. But the dark force that comes out of the Vatican is particularly using the latest solar messiah, which is supposed to be Jesus Christ. Now, there are people that want to believe that literally and see this as blasphemy. You know, we don't really know anything. We have to be really honest with ourselves. But you can see, you know, how the star that goes onto the Southern Cross is the Son of God, and he's going, and it literally translates as the house of bread, which means Bethlehem, where he's born, and all the rest of it. You can go through all of that stuff. I mean, I'd be here forever telling you about it, and I'm sure you're all familiar with it. But when you get over to the east, those stories do not exist in the same format. It's a different format completely. But like, for instance, in the South Americas, which is still not the east, is it? That's where the Mayans and the what's the other mob? Aztecs were doing their thing. They were really brilliant astronomers, and they watched the stars and they based calendars around it. The Vatican, from the papal decrees, gave decrees and orders to the Portuguese and the Spanish empires to go over there and destroy all that knowledge, get rid of it, kill it all off, kill all the priests. That's exactly what they did. But one book survived, and it ended up back in the Vatican. That's the papal view. So just to make the point that I'm trying to get at is that this has been going on a very, very long time in different quadrants of the earth. So we're always being manipulated, I think, by forces that we can't quite comprehend anyway, or that are outside of our hardwired consciousness. I mean, people are trying to break through. I'm into mysticism. I try to break through and go into a different thing. It's another different subject again. But if we get back to where you're at, yeah, sure. My question then is, when you're talking about Hycupnic and star maps on the Earth, what is the reason for it? Why is it? Were they created, or are they natural formations? Obviously, you really think they were created there. Is it covered by the land over time, and then we can only just see a bit of it? Would it have been easier to see in the past? And what would be the purpose of those things that you were just talking about? You know, like the spear in Hycupnic, all of these things, and the ear being over in Yorkshire, say. It was an image of Christ, isn't it? Because we were on the Preston North End side of things. I'm trying to get my head around the Preston North End angle of it, and what is the real deep esoteric meaning to all of that, Larry?
So the Zodiac is basically then your religion. So we're following the Son of God. He's got 12 disciples, which are in fact the constellations of the Zodiac.
Yes, I knew that. That's what I'm saying. Astro-theology, yeah.
So St. Peter is Pisces, and that's why the Pope's got the fish head on his head. So many fish gods. Drogon?
Babylonian, the fish head.
He wears the mitre, doesn't he? And a lot of them came from underground, from the sea, according to the Hopi, is it? They used to call them the Anunnaki, the ant people, because they came up from the ground. But we'll get.
Are we the ant people?
They were underground.
Oh, well,
are we?
The Anunnaki, the
are
fallen.
we?
Are we? Well, yeah.
People? I mean, you look at the giants.
Yeah.
We're the ant people.
What I'm saying is, these structures on the Earth that represent something either from the stars or some kind of. I mean, why is there a Christ image there in Britain? That's 48 miles long.
Yeah. So we'll get to that. I'll just go back to the Zodiac. So within the landscape of England, we've got 60 landscape zodiacs or more. Now, like the Glastonbury one, I try to think of this as like a layer of snow. If you've got something outside, if you leave your bike outside on the floor and it snows overnight, and you come out and you can see, you can just about make out the shape. You know it's there.
Yeah.
So this is like when the mud flood comes, so like between 1800 1850, there's a layer of silt on top of it, and it's sort of, you can vaguely make it out. But I actually believe, and so anyway, there's 60 of these landscape zodiacs and several very detailed star maps. Hugh Evans' Gwyneth's star map is absolutely fantastic. It plots constellations that cannot, from the southern hemisphere, that cannot be seen physically from England, and it's plotted out in the landscape of Wales. And the stars are marked with standing stones, with churches, even mountain peaks form the stars. So these mountains, I'm saying, being put there, they've been manufactured, they're in position, in situ, for this star map. So the landscape of England, and I'm going to have to really grab this out for you, definitely, is the landscape itself is in fact a zodiac. And I'll just find a nice picture in here for you, just so you can see it on here. We'll flash a graphic up for it.
Yeah, that's the one that's on the front cover of the book, isn't it, Larry? So we'll get a picture of that up, so
we'll get a good picture of that for you to see.
Yeah.
So what you've actually got is a zodiac. Now, in my reprint version, which this one is, I split it out for you. So this is the Arc of Cancer, and below the Arc of Cancer, you've got Land's End is the tail of Pisces, and then you've got the South Coast is Capricorn, and then you've got Sagittarius is the East Coast, and it becomes the figurehead to the Arc of Cancer. And the Arc of Cancer is the only one that's not seen in the actual zodiac, but within the Arc of Cancer is then all the land animals are inside the Arc. They're all packed into that. The Lamb of Aries is holding up the Christ figure, and all the other zodiac signs that are land animals, land-based animals, are all in the Arc. And then you get the birds are outside. So you've got the griffin, which doesn't appear. It's a Futrus that he's outside the zodiac, and then we've got Aquarius is actually Phoenix. So you see Aquarius as the water pourer, or the water. We call him the water carrier. He's always throwing the water away. He's never actually holding it. He's pouring it away.
Yeah.
But in the Glastonbury zodiac, Aquarius is the Phoenix, the rebirth, and that's Cumbria, the Lake District, and the flames. The lakes form the flames. You have to rotate it upside down, and Barrow Furnace is the head, and it's the Phoenix head. And I think the dock where they build the Trident submarines.
I've been in the eye. They've wrecked a place.
Yeah, and then the council building.
I'll tell you.
The council building is called Phoenix House.
Yeah,
and it just happens to be on the Phoenix, in the head of Phoenix.
Yeah.
Now,
very interesting.
So this is the actual Christ figure, and there's actually two of them. There's two people on there. So there's Christ in his loincloth, and then there's a dark twin, Graham calls it. And you put the two together, and you get a third person. Now, have you been up Hartfell? Is it Hartfell? Crossfell? You look at that on a OS.
Crossfell. I've been up a lot of the stone circles around here. Been on most of them.
Crossfell above it, so overlooks Temple Sowerby, is a heart, and that's Graham's drawings of the heart, the OS map, and a drawing of the heart. It's the same thing, and it's right in the heart of these images.
Right.
So it's a really amazing book on the Graham's book. He called it Behold Jerusalem.
Yeah.
I definitely want a
I've been
copy
up,
of
I've been
that.
up
And
Long Meg and you know, Castle Rig, all of those places. I don't think I've been up there though, but I know where Temple Salve is. Right, that looks interesting. I've got another question for you, Larry.
Yeah, yeah.
Do you know what a Mazzaroth is?
No.
Mazzaroth.
I probably do know what it is, but you'll have to enlighten me from the name.
Right, well, I think you do know, because it seems that that's what you're getting at. Because in the Bible it says, who on earth can really understand what the Mazzaroth is? And the Mazzaroth is literally it's all to do with astrology. It's all to do with understanding everything that you're talking about, basically. So maybe you do know what you're talking about, because it's been a hidden thing. People have tried to decipher what do they mean by the Mazzaroth, and there's been arguments about it. But it's literally supposed to be an astral understanding the zodiac. It's the zodiac. It's all of that. It's all about
and
astrology. It must have
and that's why
something to do with it being on Earth as well. The
As above,
represents,
so below.
because it's as above, so below. Yeah. So that's what the Mazzaroth is, and I think you might be getting onto something with it. It looks that way to me, from what I'm hearing.
That's why demonize it, in it, Jonny. That's why in scripture, you know, we know that's all been, you know, hijacked and edited and things removed and whatnot.
Yeah.
And like, you know, Bill Donahue will say, Jordan, you know, the late great Jordan Maxwell, it's a code. It's codified, it's allegorical, it even says that in it. And if you are reading it, you know, literally, which is what they teach us to do, so you can guarantee that's wrong. It's like what we say, if Christianity was right, they wouldn't let us do it. And we're reading it literally, when really it's a code for the adept, and it's the code is hidden from the eyes of the profane, as Bill Donahue would say. So of course in scripture, you know, don't look at astrology, it's evil, you know, it's you know, don't be doing that, you know. And again, same with the tarot just kind of represents archetypes of what we are to kind of attain and embody within us. It's not something evil or dark, though, you know, it's like anything can be used for good and anything can be used for evil. And that's the idea of, I suppose, being a bit of a Jedi. You know, the force is just the force, depending on, you know, how you want to use it. And Jedi comes from Jediah, meaning the way of the word or the power of the word. So ancient Jedi priests, again, use language of light to tune the planet to specific harmonics and frequencies, which is why they used to have bells in churches. And that is why we know that, you know, we are all frequency and harmonics. So again, it all just kind of keeps tying in, and the beat goes on and on and on, doesn't it? I mean, Larry, did I say I read the book? I mentioned that a few times. I read the book, and I want another great one, and we could perhaps just touch on that. And obviously, as we know, our work, you know, I believe it, but there's a lying belief. Let's crack on with that one. But talking of cracking on and the crack, a beautiful one, as I believe Ireland is Atlantis, and we're uncovering all this amazing information and hidden information that you in your book talk of Ireland, of course. And there's an image that fits over the Irish coast of a cetus, that looks like it's actually sniffing a pint or sniffing a harp, which and the harp is obviously synonymous with Ireland. I say sniffing, but I'm guessing that's what it's doing. And obviously it looks like it's sniffing a pint of Guinness, not an actual pint of Guinness, but the harp from the Guinness. And this is, the cetus is a kraken. And you say in your book, Larry, that's perhaps is that where the Irish get, that's where we're having to crack. Let's have to crack in that. So can you tell us a little bit more about that one as well? That was super cool.
Okay, yeah. So actually, Graham didn't look at Ireland, because basically Graham was looking. He was searching for the Glastonbury Zodiac within the coastline of the British Isles, which he found, but he found one extra, which was the Griffin, which is the head is facing north at Blackpool. If you actually look at that on a map, it's a bird's head kind of thing, or it's the Griffin head, in fact, or the Sphinx. But a futrus means snake bearer. So in the modern Ptolemy zodiac, defined about 2,000 years ago, it's actually a guy wrestling with a snake, but it's actually a futrus. It's a griffin that he finds in his book. And so he's actually found the 13th one. Now, when I was looking at this, I started looking into this. The 13th symbol of the zodiac is a futrus. But every time I looked up a Futurus, I kept coming back to Cetus, which is it's just outside the ecliptic, the path of the sun, but it's in the path of the moon. So it could be perceived as part of the zodiac. And Graham had Northern Ireland. He had Scorpio curled up in Northern Ireland. Sublime piece of artwork he's got there. And I can't fault him on that. But it's Scorpio, and the coils round it, it's stinging itself at Portadown, where the troubles, really, the height of the troubles were at Portadown, at the sting of Scorpio. But he ignores the rest of Ireland. He goes, no, I don't want to see that because it doesn't fit the Glastonbury zodiac. So I looked up, as you say, Cetus, and found this fantastic drawing with him sniffing the harp, which is another constellation to the side of it in these drawings. And you have to start wondering, has society been manipulated? Is the Irish are so synonymous with the harp? It's their national emblem. It's the Ryanair's got the harp on, and the Guinness has got the harp on it, and everything's got the harp on it. And then so the picture I had a tail, and I couldn't see the tail in the outline of Ireland. So I read up on Cetus. Now Cetus is the Kraken. Poseidon calls Cetus to go and get I can't remember my constellation's names now, but it's in Greek mythology. But it specifically says that the Kraken, Cetus, has two hind limbs. And this picture didn't have two hind limbs, but Ireland does. Cork is you come down Cork, you have to remember it's rotated 90 degrees. If you rotate it anti-clockwise 90 degrees, you see the limbs. And then, so I was convinced that was it. And then this video popped up, the 5 best things about Ireland. I can't tell you what the first 2 are. I forgot what they were. I can't tell you what the last 2 were, because when I got to the 3rd one, it says, oh, the Croken Cliffs, the second highest cliffs in Europe, sea cliffs in Europe. And I'm thinking, did he just say Kraken? And he actually said Croken. And it's like, they're telling you. And so Croken actually translates to crooked hand. And if you go and look at County Mayo, where the Croken Cliffs are, just north of there, you've got the upper limb, as it were, of the Kraken. And I'll do it this way for you. So, and the Croken Cliffs are here, and then you've got this crooked hand. And it's like that's it. It's the crooked hand. It's the Croken. Croken is the Kraken. And so it just all fit together. And so just coming back to you about the zodiac and why we should have so many zodiacs, or why it should be the zodiac. So if religion is all about worship of the zodiac and the sun, and the following the sun, and the disciples following the sun around the sky once a year, they pass it, then if the British Isles are a representation of the zodiac, then that makes the British Isles the most holiest land in the world. And then this ties back into your other people telling you how Jerusalem, Holy Land, you mentioned it yourself, Scotland, the Holy Land, Jerusalem is Edinburgh. And it all ties back in because we are now sat on the most holiest land. They can't give us stuff about what's happening in Israel. They want to destroy that so they can get canal in to oppose the Suez Canal, Zeus in reverse, Suez Canal. They've crashed the Egyptian currency. It's gone from, I think there's 20 Egyptian pounds to the pound. It went to 40. It jumped. It's now at 60. They're crashing their economy to kill Egypt because they want the control off Egypt. And they're going to build a new canal, and it's going to come out at basically where all the troubles are happening right now on the West Bank. There's going to be a canal to I think it's the Gulf of Aden.
I've heard about all that, Larry. Yeah, I know about. I'm aware of that.
They don't care what's happening there. The people, they don't care about the people anyway. We know that.
No, they don't.
But they're not bothered about them destroying Jerusalem there, because that's not true Jerusalem. We should be looking at Edinburgh. And I strongly believe, go with Stephen J.D. Beatty on that Edinburgh is Jerusalem. And
hopefully we'll get him on. I'm gonna get in touch with him, especially with the way the second series is moving. And I know you touch on it briefly again in your book about mass migration, and that is one of the biggest tools to divide and conquer, and that's exactly what we're seeing on our shores now. That bit of as we start to remember, and we're all starting, like you say, 2020 vision since the pandemic, etc. It's like shut them up, like, you know, it's like they have to tell us, but they're not telling us, because it's always that same paradox. So because we're starting to have the eyes to see now, which is why
I love your the monkeys, you know, the quantum monkeys.
Oh, the quantum monkeys.
More of us that more of us that know what's happening, what's real, the more it will disseminate out telepathically, you know, to the unawake, the sleepers.
100%. And that's why they want to shut people like us up, because again, we're not being hoodwinked. I mean, and hello, I have been, and it's not that, you know, I mean, we touched on it with Neil, and we're going to touch on it more, aren't we, Jonny? But it's like, it's not that the Baphomet stuff and the satanic stuff isn't happening, and that's not you know, important, but in a grander scheme of things, it's almost a distraction. The mass genocide is almost a distraction. It's the genocide ties in with them not wanting us to wake up, for want of a better term, to this stuff. And again, this and that's why I use to decimate this land purposefully in the description, because and as you can tell, I'm very passionate about it, because that's exactly what they're doing to this land. I mean, my town Bolton is an absolute ruin of what it was, and it's been purposefully done, and it's an agenda. You know, there's nothing wrong with a bit of multiculturalism, but as I say, you know, when I go to Italy, I want to experience Italian culture, because it's absolutely beautiful. But you know, what's happening to these lands, and they're going for it in Ireland, aren't they? I mean, we know what's happening in Ireland, and if we start to remember, and we start to remember our ancestry, and we start to remember all this amazing stuff that's, you know, in your book, and with all, like, say, all these other people that we're kind of coming across, then, you know, it's game over for them. So it's like, look at this, look at this. You know, we know their rituals, and we know what they're doing, and whether it's a scripted reality or not, without going there. But again, it goes back to language, to constructs, and how they're controlling us. And, you know, you control that consciousness, you control the narrative, then you can control us. And like you say about the past and the present, you know, they know if they control the past, they control the now. And talking about the Kraken and those places, we like what we've said with Neil, Hebrew was supposed to be the original language, but as we know, it was Gaelic, or Gaelic's very similar to Hebrew, or Hebrew is Gaelic, and you know, in that sense, because it had no vowels. So if you take the vowels out of all those places, they're all the same letters, aren't they? Creating the same sound. So it is that kind of like, it's the same kind of thing. It's super interesting. And I just wanted to read something, because I know you touch on it again in the book. And again, we're talking about who are they. You know, I always say we talk, and this is in my Law of the Law talk, they, them. Well, who are they? You know, the city of London is the city of Landan, or Ludan, which is King Lu, which goes back to obviously the Irish history, and Lucifer, and this idea of the Anunnaki, these self-proclaimed gods who came to Earth to colonize us, allegedly, in mine. Go back to what Logan says, we are the gold that they're mining. It's us, it's that kind of energy harvest, or whether they were, you know, they genetically created us or not, who knows. But these were these gods, or this kingship line, or this king or Cain line, which is Canaanite. And where we get Canis Major, so it goes back to the stars, and it goes back to the belt of Orion, it goes back to Ho Hill, according to Neil, being Sirius, and it goes back to the amazing discoveries that you know you're presenting to us today. And I just, if there's something in my soul that says this is absolutely correct, hey, I'm sold. But it's all sold. And I think that, again, because they control the narrative, and because they've got us busy looking out there and all battling the dark forces, and that's why the resurgence of this, or just the revealing of this, is so important. This is the great reveal. They want the reset, we want the reveal. And like I said, you know, as they're hell-bent on it, so am I. It's like, you know, it's like, that's the last true battle, isn't it? I think.
Yes, yeah.
That's my speech. That's it. I'll shut up now. Or give myself a headache.
just to go back slightly, yeah, everything you said, yeah, totally with you on that. You mentioned the Isle of Man, or I think you might have mentioned it, or you were going to mention it, and the distractions. And I was catching up on some of your videos, and basically how they distract us. Everything is a distraction from something else. But now the distractions are coming in thick and fast from everywhere, all around us. So what are they distracting us from? And I think they're distracting us from ourselves, from within. And so, like when I go for the Isle of Man, and this was, I thought I'd know, I see things and it doesn't quite hit. Now, I'll just for Jonny here, we can flash up the proper graphic in the edit. But this, you'll know what that is, Jonny.
Yeah,
it's a bit blurred out.
It's the Sistine Chapel.
It's Adam's. Yeah, I see it now. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
We'll put the image up.
Yeah. So God.
Yeah, the painting.
So God, it's been said that it's a brain. It's a human brain. Yeah, there's an MD.
In the Sistine Chapel,
the actual God himself in this is sat in a choir of angels, and these angels are then sat in this red rug, a cloak. Yeah. But if you actually look at it, that cloak is the inside of a skull. If you actually really truly look at it, it's the same shape as the inside. If you cut the skull down the middle, it would be the back half of the skull that you're looking at. The angels become the brain. And God is sat in the middle of his brain and he's projecting his arm out through your third eye.
Yeah.
And so are they telling us that actually God lives in our brain?
Probably, yeah. And he was like that anyway, is it? Da Vinci, who painted that?
Yeah, I mean apparently there's 8 different brains.
They knew all that stuff. They had that stuff. They were hiding things in plain sight. They always have. I mean, it doesn't. You know about the Christ oil and your 2 eyes are the 2 eyes on the cross, all of that stuff. Of course, it'd make perfect sense to me. That, absolutely. And I hadn't learned that before, but this is it. When your eyes are open to more esoteric knowledge and things like that, you start to see these. Less like Carly says, is the manly P.O. statement, isn't it? Repeat that, Doris.
When the human race learns the language of symbolism, then a great veil will fall from the minds of men.
There you go.
And that's it. It's the land of milk and honey, isn't it? The milk is the pineal gland, and the honey is the pituitary gland of our mind. It's the famous little adage, isn't it, where God said, "I'm going to hide myself from them. I'll hide on the highest mountain, no, they'll find me there. I'll hide in the deepest ocean, no, they'll look for me there, they'll find me there. I'll hide inside of them, that's the last place they'll look," basically. And it says in scripture, the kingdom is within, the kingdom, the dome, the firm, again, as above, so below, firm means stubborn, ament means idiot. It's only the limitations of our own mind and being kept in those lower frequencies that keeps us, Christ crucified on Golgotha translates as skull, place of the skull. Like it's a frigging code, right? And we are the decoders, and the code, we code it, we create it, and we decode it, as Logan would say, we're the coders and the decoders, and they've hijacked our narratives. And narratives move consciousness, and I'm dead kind of set on that one, because that's why we're looking at the stories. Oh, they're coming to kill us all. Oh, all the jabs. Oh, look. Oh, Satan, look at all the satanic rituals. Oh, they're killing children. And it's like, well, yeah, because that's what they're hijacking us to create that. Like, it's like, hang on a minute. Our true stories, our true history, our true narrative is the history of this land, and it's within us, as without us. I think we've just nailed the whole nature of existence, guys. I think we can just get a break.
Just before we do, though, just going back to God. So, and how everything is Gaelic, yeah. So the language is sort of Gaelic. So Hugh Evans, who did the star map, he did a video, and it inspired me to go and realize what this was that I was looking at. So there's a Welsh word that sums up where God is sitting on the Sistine, or what God is sitting on the Sistine Chapel. So what we're looking at is God is surrounded by a choir of angels, and this choir is inside a cloak. Now there's a single word, and I'm not going to pronounce the Welsh version. I'll pronounce the English version of it. It's coracle. So cora, part of it, means choir, as in a group of people. So when English we refer to a choir, we refer to a choir of angels. It's a group of angels. And the rackle bit of the coracle can mean covered or cloaked.
Right.
So God is sat in a coracle on the Sistine Chapel ceiling, and it just happens to be the same shape as the Isle of Man. And then at the south end of the Isle of Man, which is where his hand is pointing out, there's a little island called the Calf of Man. Now, geologically, when we refer to a calf, we say it's the smaller or the baby of the elder, like in cattle. The calf is the baby cow. But we can also say that a cow, when it's pregnant, the cow is in calf.
Yeah.
When the cow is giving birth, we say that the cow is calving. So we've now got this little island we've got the Isle of Man that's God in the coracle, which is our brain, and he's pointing at the calf of man, which we can now say is not a calf of man, but the birth of man. And the painting we refer to is the birth of Adam, that panel on the Sistine Chapel. The creation of Adam, is it? So are we saying that this island here is the birth of man, that on our giant landscape zodiac, and it's in the heart of the zodiac? Now, I say with Hugh's sort of little videos interjecting there, I realised that the Isle of Man, or the Sistine Chapel roof, or God in his coracle, is actually the constellation of Cassiopeia. Cassiopeia is the Arwen in Welsh, which is the broth that Ceridwen is making in her cauldron. And in the Welsh, in Hugh Evans's Welsh landscape zodiac, the Arwen sits within Don's cauldron. It's so it's sort of like a hollow that's surrounded by mountain peaks, and it forms Don's cauldron. Don is Ceridwen, and it's where it's the source of the River Dee, which is the most famous, most holiest of rivers within Wales. And then so this River Dee comes out through Chester, and on my Albion Zodiac comes down the back of Taurus and past comes down the River Dee anyway, the Dee estuary. So it's past the arm of Gemini, which is the Wirral, because you've got the Wirral is the arm here, and the Liverpool's. This is Seaforth in Liverpool. This is Speke, where the airport is in Liverpool. Wirral, you've got the Dee estuary, and then you've got the back of Taurus. And if you go and have a look, then back at the Sistine Chapel ceiling, I sort of bring in how Adam is actually Gemini in reverse. They sort of flipped it over. It's Liverpool flipped over, but it's on the back of the Flintshire coast, which is the Taurus, and that's the shape of the landmass in the picture on the Sistine Chapel. And the Isle of Man is God in his coracle, and if you go in a straight line, you hit where the Isle of Man is. So God in his coracle is floating down the River Dee into the centre of the Irish Sea, and it's painted on the Sistine Chapel roof in the Vatican City, the most holiest, place of holies. So it's just more, for me, it's more confirmation that they are worshipping the zodiac. And just one final point, I'm trying to get this out. Basically, there's a procession of the zodiac. So every 26,000 years, the year starts in a different point, and it takes it 26,000 years to get to that, return to the original point. Because we're at an angle, the North Pole moves. We move around.
You mean the annular wobble?
There's what they call the wobble, the 26,000 year wobble. So 25,000 years ago, the pole star, or the North Pole, as we look straight up to north, would have been the constellation of Cassiopeia. So, or very close to. So I'm saying that in the heart of my Albion Zodiac, I've got a reference to Cassiopeia, which I kind of date then. I say, well, it's at least 24,000 years ago since it's designed. Hugh Evans, on his star map, in his next book, he will be revealing, nicked his thunder here, but he reveals that his star map, he can date that to 25,000 years ago. So the landscape itself has been there 25,000 years, if not a multiple of 26,000 years before that. Yeah, when it was last at Cassiopeia.
It seems Neil's cataclysmic 24,000 year cycle, maybe that's according to Neil, these cataclysms come every 24,000 years. 12,000 years for Sirius and our sun to move away, 12,000 years for them to come back. And as obviously the Sirius heats our sun because it's way hotter, that's why it's called the sun behind the sun, heats up the earth, and that's why we have obviously ice ages and heat. And then allegedly, the theory is that these elites or elven tribes, the tribe of Dan, and all these people that have the technology and the knowledge, transport their consciousness in a way through time to become overlords of time, go underground, hop back up on the stage, do all this and that, and the whole thing begins again. And like you said, Larry, about the book being called Booked, it's for us to kind of frequency rise, kind of get that into our consciousness, kind of ascend our consciousness. But then, like it says in scripture, when you know, tell others. And that's the imprint that we leave, if we get to leave.
Well, so Neil, you had on your first part of this series, was saying how that the planets, there's the crossover, and it's a 24,000 year cycle. We get Pisces in the middle. You get the
Pisces, yeah. It's
in the middle. But to know that this actually, if this does happen, and I'm not saying it doesn't, because I haven't actually looked into it. I've just taken what Neil said as not gospel.
Gospel.
But yeah, so if this happens every 24,000 years, how do you know? How do you know it happens every 24,000? How do we know the precession of the zodiac happens every 26,000 years? To actually know that, you've got to observe it, you've got to record it accurately, and then you've got to wait another cycle, at least one more cycle, to confirm it. So we've got to say that the zodiac then, and our subjective constructs of the zodiac, are at least what we got up to 75,000 years.
The Mayan or the Aztecs were superb astronomers, and you'll know that their calendar is pretty accurate, right down to just like a few seconds or what have you. It's never gone wrong. It's the closest that any humans have come to what they class as the atomic clock, which, well, forget that. Their cycle on the long count is 26,000 years. How did they know that? And they knew that there were cataclysms that were involved in increments within that 26,000 years, and that's why they were mapping the stars. Somebody educated them in that, and if they did that themselves, I'd like to know how they did it, because no one can tell me. They've got theories, but they don't really know. But how the hell do they know that it's a 26,000 year cycle? To other modern astronomers are saying that's how long it takes for the galaxy to spin around and that, because we don't just spin around like this.
Yeah.
Because everyone seems to think the solar system's just doing that. It's not. The sun's flying around, but it's also dipping and going up and down. There's all kinds of stuff. Then it's at the mercy of all the other radioactive and magnetic electronic forces that are going on throughout that galaxy, as in any other. So it is fascinating and it's incredible. So 26,000 years, how did they know that? How?
So you've got, you've got to have 75,000 years of records, haven't you?
It's interesting with the law of one, they talk about the harvest of souls. If this is indeed a game, well, you need to pick a polarity. You're going to be positive, you're going to be negative. That works in 75,000-year cycles also.
So it's good that Larry's doing what you're doing, Larry, because if there's just one set of thought there, then there's nobody to question it. And if they educate everyone in school, this is it, all kids believe that, don't it? It doesn't take you long. Well, it doesn't take the likes of our good selves anyway, and others like us earlier in life to go, wait a minute, that don't make sense. I mean, I did that when I was 22, you know, and I'm in my 60s, so that's the way it goes. And I just think that the most important thing for us to do right now is open everything up, great reveal, as Carl has been saying, which is the thing that you're doing there, Larry, and brings together a form of unity to at least say, look, listen, look, let's open it up, really open it up. If we don't do that, then it's all closed off, narrow-minded. Everybody's saying that this is it or not. And if you look now, as we're moving into the next year or two, they're trying to close down every narrative you can think of. I know we're in a little window here at the moment, so something needs to explode because they're really trying to shut down. They're getting rid of like Dolores Gael. Shut her up. Anybody that had anything against their narrative, they destroy them. So I think we're a bit fortunate that we can still sit here now and talk like this, because they don't want us to do that. They're going to try and get rid of it. So I think it's really wonderful what we're doing, that we're having conversations like this.
I think we've covered like my book as it stands today. But I was watching your videos, and Tony Sayers.
Beware the new age.
You need to don't ignore the trauma. You know, if I'm saying there's a liar, don't ignore him because the geologist is a liar. Don't ignore it because you don't want the trauma of knowing your education's been wrong. That you've really got to face it head on and say, is my education wrong? What evidence have I got to show for that? And I do think we've done a good bit and maybe get a point too. As you mentioned, CERN. Now on the back, I think Callie was going to show there. France is a pentagram, and CERN is on an internal angle of that pentagram. Now those edges of the pentagram, because I was looking at it, and it's 600 kilometers from the external point to external point, and I then noticed the coastline was a bit, looked more like a pentagram. So I did that. Traced those in. They're 333 kilometers now from an external point to an internal point, which makes it 666 kilometers from point to point. And CERN is right on an internal point, which is going to be one of the most powerful points on that pentagram.
Yeah.
Well, they don't.
I think
that blew my mind as well.
I think what they're doing there is dangerous to me. I don't just any of that stuff really.
Yeah, and they're drawing on the whole power of France. They're using France as the power source.
Right. Yeah. Well, there's that geomagnetic field around the Earth and all the ley lines and all the rest of it. They know that shit for donkeys, haven't they? You don't get educated in any of that in school. I agree with you, Larry. I don't have trauma by being proven wrong. I think that's a delight. And in fact, I just like really the right and wrong thing gets on my nerves. It's just about being receptive and open enough. But then I really do. It's my hope that sooner or later we all come to some kind of like collective understanding, like some social memory complex, as they say in the raw material, where we all comprehend pretty much a similar thing or the same thing at least. It would be nice, but I won't hold my breath, not in the times we're living in. It's going all over the place at the moment. And these people, they're speeding up their dastardly stuff. I mean, all that stuff in Palestine and Ukraine. Please, I just wish they'd stop.
They know what they're doing, don't And they know about numerology. They know all this information, and they've had it for thousands of years, and they've hidden it from us. And as we know, occult just means hidden. And like, you know, the 666 thing, it's in the collective consciousness, so they know how to move. They know how the power of numbers, whether we know them or not. It's like narratives can lie, but numbers can't in that sense. And we know it's about they kind of they control us through this idea of time. They worship time, you know, maritime law, you know, sea of time, it means. And we've all got lost in this sea of time and forgotten who we are. And, you know, CERN comes from Cernunnos, the horned god, and that comes from Ireland again. So Pan, the horned god, all these stories, and it all kind of, like I say, just keeps coming back full circle. I mean, I even watched a video the other day because we know that that Sirius is heating up our sun, and our sun is heating up the earth, and we're coming back into that move again. That someone said the chemtrails are actually spraying the skies to give us more time. So actually, it's a good thing for us. But God knows, that's another podcast. Let's not go there. But yeah, but we'll end it there, I think, because we've covered so much. And yeah, I'd love Larry to come back on. I mean, I've been absolutely giddy about it because it's, you know, especially with the stuff we've done with Neil, and just generally on my journey, like it fits in, especially it fits in with the law, it fits in with the legal system, it fits in with the stars, it fits in with, it just all fits. And if there's ever a big jigsaw puzzle to be doing, it's this one. If you're not uncovering the nature of existence and our constructs of that matrix and the legal system, then what are we doing? So thank you so much, Larry. Thanks for joining us. Thanks to Jonny, and we'll hopefully see you all next time for part 2.
I think you're uncovering the Maseroth. I do.
Heads have been blown. Much love to everybody, and we'll see you next time.